Every April, most gardeners fall into a financial trap. You spend $300 on seedlings, and soil for the exact same crops you grew last year. Tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, beans. By August, they're thriving. By October, they're dead. And by next spring, you're back at the garden center handing over your credit card again. This isn't a food system. It's a subscription model. Garden centers rely on the replanting treadmill. They need your garden to die every winter because that's how they stay in business. But nature doesn't work on a fiscal year. For centuries, indigenous growers across North America and Europe didn't rely on annual seeds. They built food security around perennials plants that you put in the ground once and harvest for decades. We're talking about 10 to 20 years of food with almost zero maintenance after the second year. These plants don't need you to save them. They propagate themselves through deep rhizomes and self-seeding. Permaculture designers use these crops to reclaim 80% of their gardening weekends. They aren't just building a garden, they're building a system that survives supply chain collapses and seed shortages. And it's not just asparagus and rhubarb. There are 17 core perennial vegetables that cover every category: greens, alliums, roots, and herbs. They look like ornamentals fitting perfectly into small yards or even HOA-regulated spaces, while secretly functioning as a high-output food forest. Let's look at the math with perennial number 1, asparagus. Most people see a vegetable. I see an asset class. You plant an asparagus crown once. Its roots reach 6 feet deep, mining minerals and storing energy to survive the harshest winters. Every spring, it sends up a fresh harvest without you lifting a finger. A single crown costs about $5. By year 3, it's producing 30 spears a season. If you plant it today, it will still be feeding you in 2045. Compare that to the grocery store. At $5 a pound, a small bed of 5 crowns saves you nearly $100 every single year. Over the life of the plant, that's a $1,500 return on a $25 investment. That is the power of a perennial mindset. It's time to stop funding the garden center's bottom line and start investing in your own. Stop replanting. Start establishing, because the best food system isn't the one you buy. It's the one that grows while you sleep. Every April, millions of gardeners fall into the same trap. You drive to the garden center. You buy plastic trays of annual starts. You spend your weekends weeding, watering, and fighting a losing battle against the soil. By October, it's all dead. And next year, you do it all over again. This isn't a food system. It's a subscription model. But there is a way to break the cycle. It's called the Perennial Manifesto. It's the shift from being a consumer of seeds to a manager of ecosystems. Let's look at the ROI of a real food system. Take asparagus. Most people see a high-priced vegetable. I see a biological engineer. While you sleep, its roots are reaching 6 feet down, shattering compacted clay and aerating your soil for free. After the harvest, its ferns drop a heavy blanket of nitrogen-rich mulch. It builds its own fertility. You don't turn compost piles. The plant is the compost pile. Then there's rhubarb, the ultimate survivor. It laughs at minus 40-degree winters. You plant one $5 crown and it feeds your family for 30 years. Think about that time frame. 3 decades of harvest for the price of a latte. And it's a double agent in the garden. The leaves are toxic to us, but they are a biological weapon against slugs and aphids. Drop them around your brassicas. It's free pest control and mulch in one move. If you have HOA restrictions or limited space, look at the globe artichoke. It's a Trojan horse. It looks like high-end landscaping, dramatic, silvery ornamental, but underneath that beauty is a nutrient miner. Its deep taproots pull minerals from subsoil layers that your tomatoes can't even touch. It brings those nutrients to the surface, feeding itself and the plants around it as its leaves decompose. One plant, 10 years of food. 0 weeding required once those massive leaves shade out the soil. Now for those who want exponential growth, we have the aggressives horseradish and Jerusalem artichokes. Most gardeners fear them because they spread. But in an age of supply chain fragility, aggressive is exactly what you want. You want a crop that fights for its space and wins. To transition your garden from a liability to an asset, follow the protocol: first, stop tilling. You are destroying the fungal networks these perennials rely on. Second, prep the site once and prep it deep. Use high-quality compost for that initial planting because these roots are going to be there for decades. Third, group your spreaders. Put your horseradish and sunchokes in their own dedicated zones or large containers to harness their energy without it taking over your walkways. Fourth, mulch heavily in year 1. Once these plants establish their canopy, they will handle the weeding for you. This is the end of the replanting treadmill. You can spend your weekends buying more plastic starts, or you can plant a legacy. Choose the plants that work harder than you do. One planting, 30 years of food. That's not just gardening, that's freedom. Every spring, millions of people participate in a ritual that doesn't make sense. We go to the garden center, buy the same plastic pots, and spend our weekends replanting the same crops we harvested last year. This isn't a food system. It's a profit model designed to keep you on a treadmill, but there is a different way. A system where you plant once and harvest for decades. Take horseradish. It's a root crop that spreads through underground rhizomes. By year 3, you'll have more than you can possibly consume. The roots you leave in the ground simply keep producing indefinitely. It thrives in the problem corners, the places with poor soil, full shade, and complete neglect. It doesn't ask for your permission, it just grows. Then there's the Jerusalem artichoke or sunchoke. Plant 5 pounds of tubers in year 1. By year 3, you're looking at 50 pounds. By year 5, over 100. But here is the mechanism the industry won't tell you. Sunchokes don't just grow in terrible soil, they repair it. Their deep roots shatter compacted hardpan, and every fall their 6-foot stalks die back, dropping tons of organic matter onto the surface. They are the biological engineers of the garden. Now, a word of caution. These plants are aggressive. If you don't want them reclaiming your entire yard, you need a strategy. Plant them in dedicated beds with deep barriers or large containers. But if you have the space and you want a crop that yields 10 times more food with zero input, these are your foundation. We've been conditioned to think that onions, greens, and herbs must be annuals. It's a lie of convenience for the seller, not the grower. There are perennial versions of almost every crop category, and once established, they outperform annuals in every metric. Look at the walking onion, also known as the Egyptian tree onion. Instead of seeds, it grows small bulbs at the top of its stalks. When those bulbs get heavy, the stalk bends to the earth, plants itself, and starts a new cluster. It literally walks across your garden. Plant one cluster today, and in 3 years, you have 20. You get fresh greens from March to November and intensely flavored bulbs year-round. 2 crops, 1 plant, 0 replanting. You are gardening backwards if you're still buying transplants every spring. It's time to stop renting your food and start owning your ecosystem. Reclaim your weekends. Reclaim your soil. Plant once, harvest forever. Most garden centers aren't selling you a food system. They're selling you a subscription. Every spring you buy the same seeds, the same plastic starts, and the same bags of fertilizer. It's a replanting treadmill designed for profit, not resilience. But if you look past the bright displays of annual tomatoes and thirsty lettuce, there is a different way. A system where you plant once and harvest for a decade. Take the walking onion. While your neighbor's garden dies at the first frost, these alliums are thriving at 30 degrees below zero. They don't care about poor soil or partial shade. They don't wait for your permission to grow. They move across your garden, planting themselves, claiming the problem areas where everything else fails. Then there's sorrel. This is the king of ROI. For a one-time investment of $4, you get a perennial green that replaces store-bought spinach for the next 7 to 10 years. Think about the math. A single plant gives you 4 to 6 harvests per season. That's over 200 salads from one root system. No weekly trips to the store for greens shipped in plastic from 3 states away. No waste. Just a lemony, tangy harvest that grows stronger while you sleep. If you mulch it once a year, your labor is essentially zero. We've been conditioned to forget about plants like Good King Henry. It's an indigenous European crop that fell out of favor because it doesn't fit the industrial model. It's too easy. It's too permanent. You get 3 vegetables and 1 mild spinach-like leaves, shoots that rival asparagus, and edible flower buds. It self-seeds gently. By year 3, your initial 5 plants have become 12. It's a self-replicating armory of nutrition packed with iron and calcium, thriving in the dappled shade where annuals wither. And for the flavor of the garden, you have lovage. Most people call it an herb. They're wrong. It's a 6-foot-tall celery substitute that feeds a family of 4 for 15 years from a single plant. Here is the protocol for a resilient system. First, stop fighting your landscape. Place these perennials in the guilds under fruit trees or in the corners you've neglected. Second, use the cut and come again method. Harvest the outer leaves of your sorrel and greens, leaving the heart intact. The plant sees this as a signal to produce more, not to die. Third, treat your soil as a bank. Mulch once a year to suppress weeds, and let the deep taproots of plants like lovage pull minerals from 6 feet down depths an annual lettuce could never reach. When the supply chain stutters or the price of a plastic container of greens hits $6, the gardener on the treadmill panics. But the perennial grower just walks outside with a pair of shears. Stop renting your food. Start owning the system. Stop buying water masked as vegetables. Every time you buy a bunch of celery at the grocery store, you're paying $4 for a product that is 95% water and 0% resilience. It's the annual gardening treadmill. You buy, you plant, you harvest, and then the plant dies. The garden center wins. You lose. There's a better way, a systemic way. Meet lovage. For an $8 investment, you get a plant that reaches 6 feet down into the earth, pulling up minerals that annuals can't touch. It tastes like celery on steroids with a hint of anise. One plant, 1 decade of harvests, no replanting, no grocery bills for herbs. But this isn't just about food. It's about defense. Lovage is a biological fortress. It summons parasitic wasps and hoverflies, aerial reinforcements that wipe out aphids and caterpillars before they can touch your garden. Then there's the humble chive. Most people see a garnish. I see a border wall. Chives contain sulfur compounds that act as a chemical deterrent for Japanese beetles and carrot rust flies. They don't just sit there, they work. Think about the math. You buy 1 pot for $3. By year 3, that single clump can be divided into 10. That is an infinite ROI. You are essentially printing your own food and pest control. Even if you're a renter, a 5-gallon bucket on a balcony is all you need to opt out of the industrial supply chain. If you want to go deeper, look at sea kale. This is the forgotten king of European gardens. It's a coastal survivor that thrives in salt and sand, producing for 20 years straight. In the spring, you blanch the shoots for a flavor that rivals the best asparagus. In the summer, the leaves become your greens. It requires almost zero maintenance. To break the cycle, you need a strategy. Here is the perennial protocol. First, stop thinking in rows. Think in layers. Place your lovage at the back of the bed to act as a windbreak and a pest control anchor. Second, use chives as your living edge. Plant them tightly around your more vulnerable vegetables to create a scent barrier that confuses predators. Third, propagate by instinct. Every 3 years, dig up your chive clumps and sea kale roots. Split them, replant them. Expand your territory without spending a single dime at a big box store. This isn't just gardening. This is a quiet rebellion against a profit model that demands you start from scratch every spring. Plant once, harvest for decades. Reclaim your weekends and your food sovereignty. Every spring, millions of gardeners fall into the same trap. They spend hundreds of dollars on annual seeds and nursery starts only to watch them die by November. It's a profit model, not a food system. It's a replanting treadmill that consumes your weekends and your wallet. But there is a way to opt out. Imagine planting a crop once and harvesting it for a decade. No tilling, no irrigation, no annual seed bills. Take sea kale. Most plants wither the moment the clouds stop raining, but sea kale evolved on coastal cliffs, digging its roots into fast-draining soil and poor earth. Once those roots establish, it thrives in the heat where annuals surrender. It doesn't ask for your garden hose, it asks for your neglect. Then there's Turkish rocket. This isn't just a green, it's a spicy perennial arugula that yields for 7 straight years from a single planting. While your store-bought greens bolt and turn bitter in the summer sun, Turkish rocket stays cool. It loves the shade. It hides under the canopy of your trees, turning empty, useless corners of your yard into a continuous harvest of edible flowers and peppery leaves. If you have a fence or a trellis, you're sitting on wasted vertical real estate. Caucasian spinach or hablitzia can climb 10 feet high, producing several pounds of spinach-flavored greens from just 1 square foot of ground. It's cold hardy down to 20 below zero. Plant it once on the dark side of your house and it will feed you for 15 years. But the real game changer is a forgotten native staple, the ground nut. Indigenous growers relied on this for centuries and for good reason. It's a nitrogen-fixing vine, meaning it literally fertilizes your soil while it grows. But look at the numbers. A typical potato is about 2% protein. The ground nut, 16%. It's a high-protein tuber that tastes like a cross between a potato and a peanut. It stacks functions, fixing the soil, climbing your corn stalks, and filling your cellar with food that stores for months. To build this system, you need a new protocol. First, stop thinking about rows and start thinking about layers. Place your Turkish rocket in the partial shade of deciduous trees. Position your Caucasian spinach against north-facing fences. Second, prioritize root establishment over immediate yield. In the first year, let the roots reach deep 6 feet or more to find the water table. Third, integrate nitrogen fixers like groundnut into your existing polycultures. Let them climb your beans or corn. This is how you reclaim 80% of your gardening weekends. Stop buying the treadmill. Start building a fortress of food that grows itself. Plant once, harvest for decades. Every spring, millions of gardeners fall into the same trap. They spend hundreds of dollars at garden centers on annuals destined to die in 6 months. It is a profit model, not a food system. You are on a replanting treadmill, trading your weekends for a harvest that disappears with the first frost. But there is a way to break the cycle, to plant once and harvest for decades. Think of the groundnut as a biological bank account. One tuber costs you maybe $8. By year 3, that single investment has cloned itself 20 times over. You aren't just growing food, you're growing capital. You divide the tubers, expand the bed, and your production scales exponentially for free. Then there is the ostrich fern. Most people see an ornamental. A chef sees fiddleheads prize spring shoots that command $12 a pound at local markets. These aren't just plants. They are high-value assets that thrive in the shadows. They turn the boggy, sun-starved corners of your property where vegetables go to rot into productive food zones. One planting gives you 20 years of returns. It's about filling the gaps. Fiddleheads emerge when your garden is still waking up, tasting like a cross between asparagus and green beans packed with omega-3s. They solve the hunger gap before the rest of the world has even started their seeds. If you live under the thumb of a strict homeowners association, you need a Trojan horse. Enter the daylily. To your neighbors, it's just landscaping. To you, it's a multi-purpose pantry. The flower buds are for stir-fries. The open blooms add a sweet crunch to salads. Even the tubers taste like mild radishes. It is one of the most resilient perennials on earth, thriving in clay, sand, drought, or flood. By the 3rd year, a single clump can be divided into 10 new plants. You are propagating an edible landscape while the world thinks you're just tending the flowers. For those playing the long game, look to the shade of the forest. Ramps or wild leeks are the gold standard of perennial alliums. They are slow to establish, yes. It takes 5 years to reach full capacity, but they sell for $20 a pound and occupy the space where nothing else grows. It is the ultimate patience play. To manage this system, you must follow the perennial protocol: never take everything. For ferns and ramps, the rule is 50%. Leave half the shoots to photosynthesize, allowing the roots to reach 6 feet down, anchoring your food security into the very bedrock of your land. This isn't just gardening. This is reclaiming 80% of your weekends. It is building a system that doesn't collapse when the supply chain does. Stop buying the treadmill. Start planting the legacy. Every spring, millions of gardeners fall into the same trap. They drive to the garden center. They buy plastic trays of annual seedlings. They spend hundreds on soil fertilizers and pest control. And 6 months later, it's all dead. The cycle resets. The money is gone. This isn't a food system. It's a retail profit model. You are on a replanting treadmill, and it's time to step off. Imagine a garden that ignores the calendar. A system where the roots reach 6 feet down, tapping into ancient minerals while your neighbor's lettuce wilts in the first heat wave. This is the power of perennials. Take the ramp. It tastes like a wild fusion of garlic, onion, and leek. You plant it once, just once. It spreads through seeds and bulb division, naturalizing into a permanent colony. In those lean early spring weeks, when the rest of your garden is a brown patch of mud, the ramps are already there, waiting for you. Zero maintenance, zero cost. The only price, patience. You wait 3 years for establishment. You harvest sustainably 1 leaf per plant. In return, you get a lifetime of food security. When you stop viewing your backyard as a grocery aisle and start viewing it as an ecosystem, the math changes forever. Consider the financial transformation. A typical family spends up to $400 every year on annual inputs. Over 2 decades, that is $8,000 evaporated into the soil. Compare that to a one-time $200 investment in perennial crowns and roots. You aren't just saving nearly $8,000, you're reclaiming 80% of your weekends. No more endless weeding. No more daily watering marathons. Here is the protocol for a hands-off food forest. In year 1, focus on the foundations. Asparagus, rhubarb, walking onions, and sorrel. These are your workhorses. In year 2, layer in the complexity. Lovage, sunchokes, and Turkish rocket. By year 3, you finalize the canopy with sea kale groundnut and fiddleheads. You now have 17 different crops covering your entire nutritional spectrum. Greens from Caucasian spinach, roots from horseradish, shoots from asparagus. This is more than just a hobby. It's an insurance policy. Supply chains are fragile. Seed companies consolidate. Food prices are a volatile graph. But an asparagus crown planted in 2025 doesn't care about inflation. It doesn't care about the stock market. In the year 2045, while the world is still chasing the next harvest, your garden will still be producing. Plant once, harvest for decades. Reclaim your time. Every April, millions of gardeners perform the same ritual. They drive to a big box store. They buy the same plastic trays of tomatoes, peppers, and lettuce. And they spend hundreds of dollars on plants destined to die in 6 months. This isn't just gardening. It's a subscription service you never agreed to. Garden centers thrive on the replanting treadmill. Their entire business model depends on your dependency. If your food died every winter, you have to come back in the spring. It's a profit model, not a food system. But there is a glitch in this matrix. It's called perennial design. While annual crops are shallow-rooted and fragile, perennials are built for the long game. Think of asparagus berries or fruit trees. These plants don't wait for your permission to grow. They evolve to reach 6 feet into the earth, tapping into minerals and water that annuals can't touch. When you plant a perennial, you aren't just putting a seed in the dirt. You're installing biological infrastructure. You're moving away from a system that requires constant intervention, fertilizers, pesticides, and your own backbreaking labor, and toward a partnership with nature. Indigenous growers understood this for millennia. They didn't dominate the land. They designed it to be self-maintaining. They built food forests that produced for generations without a single bag of store-bought fertilizer. To break the cycle, you need a new protocol. First, stop buying disposable plants. Shift 80% of your budget to perennials this spring. Every season you delay is another $300 wasted and another year of waiting for your system to mature. Second, focus on soil biology, not chemical inputs. Let the roots do the work of tilling and feeding. Third, design for propagation. Choose plants that spread, divide, and multiply on their own. Plant once, harvest for decades. This is how you reclaim your weekends, your bank account, and your resilience. Stop funding the treadmill. Start building a fortress. The best time to plant was 10 years ago. The second best time is today.